Hi, hello. I'm Bear, and some time ago inside my big book of YouTube ideas, I wrote this little number here. To make the humble auto clicker has been on my to-do list for a while, but I've never got around to doing it because I didn't understand what both the DLL import attribute and the extern modifier were doing in all the articles and tutorials that I read and watched, which turns out is necessary to make an auto clicker in C#. So instead of avoiding it, I finally buckled down and researched, and it's easier to understand than I thought. Basically, DLL import is importing a C++ file, here named user32, to be used by the application, and the extern modifier is referencing a function inside of the C++ file and allowing us to call it inside of our C# program. At least that's what I gather. And yeah, super easy, about 16 lines of code depending on how you format it, and yeah, here's a speed test. And here it is working in Cookie Clicker. Fun stuff, but also it got me thinking, if I can have my program click for me, could I also automate mouse movements as well? Because there is another idle game called Leaf Blower Revolution that has no clicker mechanic to it. Could I get the computer to play the game for me? Turns out user32 also has a function to move the mouse as well. So 300 lines of code later, and now my computer plays Leaf Blower Revolution almost by itself. Also, I'm super proud of this program. Basically, it moves the mouse to constantly blow away the leaves to rack up points, and every 5 seconds or so it takes a screenshot, scans the bottom of the screen for the red notification letting me know something is available for purchase, opens that window, clicks all the purchase buttons inside, and then closes the window. All automatically. I was able to go out for a run while this was running at home and came back to a buttload of points. Really cool, and totally stole 3 days away from me just playing with it. And that's not an innuendo. But both Cookie Clicker and Leaf Blower Revolution play itself anyways when you close the application. This is why they call it an idle game after all. So what about a real man's game? How far could I take this? And this had me thinking about Code Bullet's most recent video where he wrote a genetic algorithm to beat Jump King. In this video, he basically had to remake the entire game in order to write a program to beat it. This is great and all, and I love the video. But what fun is there if you don't get the achievements and see the cutscenes, the credits, everything? I want to actually beat Jump King, not a cheap remake I made for a video, the actual game. So I did just that. Jump King is the Dark Souls of platforming games. Unforgiving if you make a mistake and extremely reliant on muscle memory and time dedication. I'm a working man, so I don't really have the time to dedicate, and I'm old. Not like gray hair collecting retirement old, more like young children call me sir and it bothers me old. Which means my muscle memory and reaction speed are not quite like they used to be, making this game irradiated cow tits to my psyche. And I'm serious, when I played this the first time, I played for like 2-ish hours and I couldn't get past the 4th screen. So how do we do this? There is no mouse in Jump King, only keyboard, and I've yet to write a program simulating keyboard presses. Fortunately, user32 does have a function to simulate keystrokes, but even more fortunately, there is a NuGet that has everything in a nice concise bundle already. So you know the deal, we just yoink that, put it in our program, and half the hard work is already done for us, which is really cool. If I combine this NuGet with system.threading, I can really simulate key presses, and depending on how long I let the thread sleep will determine how long the key is pressed, which is important because Jump King is all about timing. If you never played before, here's the gist. There are only 3 buttons in Jump King: space, which is the jump button, and the left and right arrows, which determines which direction the player jumps in. And I hear you asking, 3 buttons, then what makes this so hard then? Well, young one, the hard part is the fact that the player's jump height is determined by how long you leave the space button pressed. And the time it can remain pressed is anywhere between 20 milliseconds to 600 milliseconds, and yes, I did test that. What does this mean? Well, let's look at any speedrun on YouTube, and at the end of the run, the game will give you stats on normal things like how long it took, how many attempts, how many sessions, but most importantly is how many jumps it took. What does this mean for us? Well, this means that even at a pro level, we need to account for 232 jumps, which can range anywhere from 20 to 600 milliseconds of hold time. So you might start to see the difficulty. So here's my idea on how to beat the system. We always start at the same place with every new game. With full control of the keyboard programmatically, I can write a function that restarts a game new with a push of a button, which looks a little something like this. The code looks god-awful, but it works. Since we restart in the same position every time, we could just write a new function and feed the program a set of moves to make, and theoretically it should be the same every time as long as we restart from the beginning. Now we are getting somewhere. I can write a big array of moves. In this sense, they are a vector 2. The x value determines the action, which is between 0 and 3. 0 is a jump left, 1 is a jump right, 2 is a walk left, and 3 is a walk right. The y value is the time in milliseconds to perform that action, meaning a vector 2 of 0, 150 means to jump left after 150 milliseconds of hold time, and a vector 2 of 3, 800 means to walk right for 800 milliseconds. Makes sense, but now the hard part. We've got to figure out what moves to make, and I wish I had a good answer for this, but the only thing I know to do is to just write one move at a time and let it play out, which took me an unholy amount of time, and you'll get to experience it in just a few seconds. Start the time lapse. Okay, pause. It was about here that I started to notice something was wrong. This was supposed to be 100% consistent. After all, I am programming this into a computer. But seemingly some runs would be ruined at places that I have already programmed way earlier, moves that I know are successful moves. I can only think of two reasons why this is happening. 1. I am a big dumb stupid head that eats his own boogers and I did something wrong in the code, or 2. Computers are bad at being consistent when it comes to counting milliseconds. Well, it turns out both are kind of true. I'm using thread.sleep to determine the length of time between keyboard strokes, and it turns out that thread.sleep is horribly inaccurate, varying as much as a 20th in either direction according to this Stack Overflow post, which is making my program less like a precision machine and instead like a grandpa. Has a lot of heart, but kind of forgets where he's at sometimes. So I had a choice to make: rewrite the code with a different, more accurate method of counting milliseconds, or cheese it. Well, you might as well call this elbow macaroni because I cheesed the hell out of it. I figured a 20th wasn't that much, at least not enough to ruin one jump. The problem is over several jumps. What I figured I could do is use some of the in-game structures and literally just walk into them like it's Harry Potter and I have a train to catch. This effectively gives me a new starting point that I can use to calibrate the next upcoming jumps from, so if you see the character walk into a wall, this is why. All right. 18 screens in out of... Wait, how many screens are in this game? 44? This is taking way too long. I've been at this for 16 hours and I've only gotten 18 screens in, and I haven't even really gotten to the hard part. The main problem is the fact that now that I've gotten this far, every time I add a new jump and want to test it, I have to restart from the beginning, and it takes the program 4-ish minutes to get this far. Fortunately, because I've been doing this for 16 hours now, I'm getting a really good feel for how long the jump should be held for. So instead of having to do one jump at a time then restart, I can usually add about 3 or 4 jumps each time and be pretty accurate about it. But on the other hand, the same issue from before is still happening sometimes. So I'm getting just as frustrated and annoyed if I was actually playing the game. Time to rethink this. I could, now hear me out, just assign different length jumps to different keys on the keyboard and use the keyboard as a giant controller and just play the game. Well, it seemed like a better idea than what I was currently doing, and it saved me from having to restart all the way from the bottom with every mistake. So, another 130 lines of disgusting code later, and I had a little cheat that I could use to beat the game. Basically, letters Q through I represent a left-hand jump ranging from 550 to 200 milliseconds, and letters A through K represented a right-hand jump in the same range. And since the max and minimum jumps were easy to pull off even for me, I left those out and just did those manually. So now the only job was to let the code I wrote earlier take me to screen 18 and I could take over manually from there. I was genuinely terrified of this jump when I came across it because it looked so hard. Turns out my program made this jump easy, but man did it suck when you messed it up. I wish I had recorded my reaction to this pocket. The hardest part about this area is getting stuck over here because it seemed like the only way out of here was just to fall. And every time I overshot, I got so mad. I knew this area was coming, and I knew that if I could make it here, I'd beat the game. This was almost as good feeling as actually beating it because of how hard the snow level was. Good God, the chills that were running through my body when I reached here were unprecedented. No voiceover for this, just watch. And there she is, the babe. You have no clue how happy I was to reach this point. I literally stood up and jumped with joy because of how happy I was to make it here. But let me just say one thing. No macro or cheat that I came up with can make anybody good at this jump. Besides the snow level, the ice level took up most of my time. So much so that I'm convinced that anyone that has beaten Jump King could do Chapel Perilous blindfolded. I had to restart so many times because of this one jump. I was so happy with this run that I immediately restarted another and did another run all the way from the beginning and got a time of 47-ish minutes, which is roughly about an hour and a half less than the previous run, which is kind of cool. And finally, I did another run today, shortly before writing this script, and technically, according to speedrun.com, with my program, I am the 630th fastest Jump King in the world. I have a video of my fasted recorded run in the description below, so if you want to see how fast I can do it, check it out below. But either way, that's it. Thank you for watching. I'm going to stop saying what I plan on doing in my next video because it never comes true, but if I had to guess, it's going to have to do something with AI art or generative art or something like that. Like, comment, and subscribe down below. If you do, I promise to let you draw me like one of your French girls. Okay, bye.